All right, let's connect some dots. We're about to uncover a single, really powerful idea that's hiding in plain sight pretty much everywhere you look.
I know. It sounds like the setup to a really weird joke, right? A deer, a blackout, and your laundry. But stick with me here, because by the end of this, you are going to see the single powerful and, sometimes destructive thread that ties all of them together.
So, the answer to this little puzzle, it's a single fundamental action, one you see in nature, in our most complex technology, and, even in your own home. And that concept is shedding.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's start where it's most obvious, the natural world. Because out here, letting go isn't about failure. Nope, it's a brilliant strategy for survival. Just think about a tree in autumn. Those falling leaves aren't just dying and tumbling off by accident. It is a highly controlled, very deliberate process called abscission. The tree is actively deciding, okay, time to cut my losses, all to conserve precious water and nutrients to make it through a harsh winter. It's a calculated retreat, all to ensure it survives.
And it does this with incredible precision. First up is resorption. The tree literally pulls back all the valuable nutrients, and that's what causes those beautiful fall colors to pop. Next, it forms a protective layer, basically a tiny scar to seal the connection point nice and clean. And finally, in a special zone of weak cells, it triggers the detachment, letting the leaf fall without harming the branch one bit.
Now, this whole strategic shedding thing isn't just for plants. Oh no. The animal kingdom takes this concept and puts a much more dramatic and bony spin on it.
Okay, so here's a super important distinction we have to get straight. Antlers versus horns. They are not the same thing. Horns, like you'd see on a goat, they're permanent. But antlers, grown by animals like deer and elk, are totally temporary. In fact, they're the fastest growing bone known to science. And in this incredible act of biological recycling, they are shed and completely regrown every single year.
And this annual shedding plays a massive role in the whole ecosystem. I mean, those discarded antlers, they are packed with calcium and phosphorus. So you get rodents like squirrels and porcupines who just gnaw on them to get these essential nutrients. It makes a deer's shed antlers a key resource for the rest of the forest.
So, nature uses shedding for survival. And it turns out we engineers have been paying attention. We've taken this exact same principle from the forest and applied it to our industrial world to prevent total catastrophe.
It's called load shedding, and here's how it works. When a power grid is under extreme stress, like when demand for electricity is way higher than what's available, the operators have a choice. They can either let the entire system collapse into a huge uncontrolled blackout, or they can strategically shed part of the load to save the whole thing.
And just like that tree, this is not random at all. It's highly prioritized. As you can see, critical things like hospitals and emergency services are protected at all costs. Massive industrial sites are often set up to disconnect automatically. It's the non-critical areas, residential and commercial spots, that get shed first to relieve that pressure and keep the most important stuff running.
And right here, this is the core idea that connects everything. Whether it's a tree dropping a leaf to survive the winter, or a power grid dropping a circuit to stop a blackout, shedding is a small, local action that's taken to solve a huge, system-wide problem.
Okay, so far, we've seen shedding as a defensive tool, right, for preservation. But this act of letting go, of creating a temporary gap, it's also fundamental to the act of creation itself.
Just think about weaving. To create fabric, you have to create an opening. By lifting some threads up and lowering others, a weaver creates a temporary gap called the shed. That little opening is where the next thread passes through. No shed, no fabric. It's that simple. This act of separation is absolutely essential for creation.
So all the examples we've looked at so far, the tree, the deer, the power grid, the loom, they all involve intentional, controlled shedding. But what happens when shedding is an accident? What happens when it's an unintended, nasty byproduct of our daily lives?
And this brings us right back to our laundry. See, every single time we wash synthetic clothes, they shed these microscopic plastic fibers. And the type of yarn makes a huge difference. Just look at the chart. Spun yarns, with all their loose little fiber ends, shed a massive amount. Tightly twisted yarns, on the other hand, they shed far, far less.
Now here's a potential solution that sounds pretty good at first. For those really high-shedding fabrics, studies have shown that using a dryer can shed up to 66% fewer microplastic fibers than washing. That sounds like good news, right? Well, there's a pretty big catch.
The fibers that are shed during washing, they go down the drain and they contribute to water pollution. But the fibers shed during drying, they become airborne. So instead of polluting our rivers and oceans, we might be contributing directly to air pollution with microplastics. It's an environmental trade-off with no easy answer at all.
Okay, let's bring all these different threads together. From a forest floor to a control room, all the way to our washing machines, we've seen one simple word describe a profoundly powerful and universal act.
So let's just recap. In biology, what's shedding for? Survival and recycling. In technology, it's all about stability and prevention. In creation, it's essential for manufacturing. And in our environment, well, it's become a source of unintentional destruction. 4 totally different domains, all linked by this one unifying concept.
And this brings us right back to our central idea. The act of letting go of a small part is often the only way to preserve, stabilize, or even create the whole. It's a fundamental principle for how pretty much all complex systems work.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Once you start looking for these patterns, you start to see them everywhere. So the question I want to leave you with is this: what other invisible principles are shaping our world, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to connect the dots?